Get your gear ready. This is A Sherpa's Guide to Innovation. I thought I'd begin by reading a poem by Shakespeare, but then I thought, why should I? He never reads any of mine. Thank you, Spike Milligan, and this is A Sherpa's Guide to Innovation, a podcast dedicated to guiding you along your innovation expedition. Ben Tingey speaking, your humble Sherpa host. Wherever you are in this beautiful world listening to this podcast, I want you to put your hands together for this episode's guest. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Robin Glasco, co-founder and managing partner at Bambü Global Healthcare Advisors, joining us from Boston, Massachusetts today. Robin, welcome to A Sherpa's Guide to Innovation podcast.
Thank you for having me. Wow, that makes me sound so fancy.
I'm so excited to hear what you're about to say. So we're honored to have you with us, and we're so appreciative of your time. Thanks so much.
No problem. Let's go.
Well, before we initiate our conversation, I just want to deliver a quick message to our listeners. Please click that subscribe button on your podcast app, share this episode on social media, and give us a rating and a review. You can engage with us on Twitter using the hashtag InnovationEngine, and feel free also to reach out over LinkedIn. Okay, Robin, are you ready to rock?
I am ready. Let's go.
Awesome. Okay, Robin, fill in the blank. I wanted to be a blank when I grew up. Now I'm a blank, and they both blank.
Actually, I wanted to be an actress when I was growing up, which is really strange because I was incredibly shy. And now I'm an entrepreneur. And I'd say both of them do not pay well at the beginning. So that's what I would say they have in common. That's
terrific. I love that. Great humor. Wonderful. Well, so Robin, your newest venture is Bambü Global Healthcare Advisors, as you said, as an entrepreneur. So can you share with our listeners the genesis story of Bambü, and also what is the job or jobs to be done for which someone would hire Bambü?
So sure. So Bambü, I always love to tell the story of Bambü. It is the strongest and fastest growing grass in the entire world. It can grow over 3 feet in a 24-hour period. It's strong. It rivals brick, concrete, steel, and it grows in pretty diverse climates. So you can pretty much do anything you want to it and it'll still grow. In order to experience that unprecedented growth, you have to have a bit of patience because it can take 2 to 3 years before you see any fruits of your labor. So you can see quickly why there's some parallels to what we do, which is, we're very serious about changing the conversation in healthcare. I have sat in many C-suites, boardrooms from Hawaii to Maine, actually. And I've noticed that the conversation has relatively been the same, which is want to have unprecedented growth. We want to be able to attract and retain employers and consumers, and how do we engage consumers, and how do we ensure that our patients have high quality, affordable health care. Same conversation, and I would say non-differentiating results out in the marketplace. So when we talk about changing the conversation, it starts with a mindset. And so we formed Bambü, the consulting arm of Bambü, to help change the mindset and change the conversations in boardrooms across the country. And we believe if you change the conversation, you get people to think differently, then they might come up with different solutions from which you can invest in. And that's where our Bambü venture comes into play, where we are a venture capital organization looking to invest in high-performing startup companies in healthcare. And with that, it's primarily women and minorities. Not because I'm a woman and minority, but because they have up to 30% better performance compared to white male counterparts. No offense. And then we believe, speaking of Clay Christensens, we believe that in order to disrupt healthcare, you need to bring those solutions down market. And that is where the underrepresented, underserved, vulnerable communities exist. And so that's where Bambü can uniquely position itself to help disrupt healthcare. So what someone would call Bambü for is if they're stuck, meaning they do not necessarily know the problem or they need help with executing. And so not knowing the problem is often hard for many organizations to come to grips with. But again, going back to what I said earlier, I've sat around many boardrooms and C-suites, and it's the same conversation, and yet the same results are happening. So we can help go a lot deeper in really getting to the right problem. Once you have the right problem, then aligning all resources to tackle that problem, and we can help with that.
Outstanding. Folks, go contact Bambü and get the help that you need.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. You talked about wanting to change mindsets in boardrooms and in strategy retreats. What do you want to shift the mindset to?
Yeah, so I believe in a mindset of abundance versus scarcity. And oftentimes within healthcare, we tend to think of our hands are strapped by regulatory challenges or satisfying stakeholders or board members. We tend to come from a place of I only have X amount in my budget, and versus having an abundance mindset, it frees you up from those constraints and allows a lot of free-flowing ideas to occur. I also believe in a mindset of a bias towards action. And by that meaning, I always say, if you've ever worked in an organization larger than 2 people, you could probably attest to this, that it will take sometimes up to 3 years before a problem actually turns into a solution that is out in the market. And that's usually because you have meetings and rescheduled meetings, and you go to those who have the decision and one person can stop it. And you have to go back and regroup. And then you go and you ask for some, 1 million, and you get 100,000, and you have to figure out how to make that work. And you have to go back and meet, re-meet, and meet again. And everything you do in healthcare touches IT, whether it's a legacy system or something cloud-based. Everything touches IT. So then you have to do needs requirements. We have all the people in the room to make a decision and figure out how you go from 1 million to $100,000, and you meet and you re-meet and reschedule because you can never get everyone there at the same time. You get my drift. So having a bias towards action is allowing you to, how can you test an idea when it's in a low fidelity, early stage, safe environment, rather than spend a lot of time for perfection that you'll never be able to achieve within healthcare. So I definitely believe in a bias towards action. And I would also say my favorite mindset is falling in love with the problem and not the solution. And as a 2-time business major, shout out to the University of Colorado, go Buffs, 2-time business major, you're taught to bring solutions to problems. And usually the problem is already predefined. But I have found oftentimes when you're so in love with the solution that you will continue to force the solution despite what your intuition, what the market, what people are telling you that this won't work. We are often still pressed to move forward with the solution. Versus if you fall in love with the problem, you are relentless with your obsession of trying to solve that problem. So you'll go through hundreds and thousands of solutions so that you, in order to fall in love with that problem. And I have to say that the fact that I was able to get through any of that without uttering a cuss word is, I think, pretty impressive.
Congratulations on being able to do that. And that's so awesome. Everything that you just said is music to our ears on the Innovation Engine. And we actually have the quote, "Fall in love with a problem, not a solution," emblazoned on our office wall in huge letters because we believe that so strongly as well. So that's just wonderful to hear. Mm-hmm. You said that you work with boards, Bambü offering consulting services, and you also serve on the board of several nonprofits and are likely bringing a lot of these theories and ideas to them. What about their social mission intrigued you sufficiently to get involved, and which nonprofits do you work with specifically?
Sure. So my earliest memories, I remember spending Thanksgivings and other holidays serving meals to those who did not have food. I remember bringing clothes to those who did not have clothing to wear. I remember mentoring, not my earliest memory, but as I was getting older, I used to mentor students, either from a peer counseling perspective or just math, as well as I would read to second and third graders, which is interesting. It wasn't until you asked this question that I realized that the boards that I sit on, one of the boards that I belong to is Community Servings, and the premise of that organization is to bring foods to those who are very ill. It started off as a organization that was HIV/AIDS focused. The Community Servings brings food to the individual as well as the families who do not have the financial means to get access to healthy, nutritious meals. And where many organizations will just feed the patient, Community Servings recognizes that it takes a village and will feed the entire family, whether it's two people. I
love that insight.
Right?
That's great.
Right, because most often will give the food to their kids or their family rather than eat it themselves. So just one less thing for them to worry about as they're trying to get well.
Yeah, the caregiver is the second patient.
Right, exactly. The other organization I belong to that I'm a board member of is Build. And who knew in this day and age that graduating from high school is still a challenge, particularly in inner city schools. And one way to tackle that is through introducing entrepreneurship to students from freshman through senior year. They start off learning business plans and how to do financial plans and how to come up with a product concept. They learn about human-centered design. At 14, these kids are CEOs of their own companies. I'll say that again, CEOs of their own companies. I think at 14, I was probably still watching Tom and Jerry at that age. I was definitely not an entrepreneur. The other board that I belong to is Boston Harbor Now. And what I love about Boston Harbor Now, aside from it's a really fun board, is that it takes into account how much our environment impacts our health, well-being, obviously how much it impacts city and its infrastructure and ability to attract and retain large corporations as well as individuals to actually want to come and take up residence here. And so what I believe from a healthcare perspective, while many are focused on the physical aspects of health, meaning blood pressure and this hurts, that sort of thing, slowly moving into the mental health capacity. But I don't think until we can start tackling those social determinants of health, that we start thinking of health as an ecosystem, not just a traditional payer, provider, hospital, that is the only way that we can begin to disrupt healthcare. And then the fourth board that I belong to is American Telehealth Association. And I believe definitely being in healthcare, technology is a significant enabler. It's not the headline, but it's definitely an enabler to make a lot of the frustrations of healthcare a little less painful and eliminate some of the barriers to care that many have. You know, it's interesting, when I first started at Blue Cross Blue Shield as the head of innovation, one of the things that was filling up my inbox were people trying to sell me technology solutions. And I'm a girl who loves shiny things and gadgets, but that to me was not my priority. And that is mostly what a lot of healthcare is focused on. A lot of startups are focused on technology. And one of the things that I learned from Kaiser Permanente, from one of my favorite clinicians, Bill Wright, he had this equation, OO plus NT equals EOO. That's old organization plus new technology equals an expensive old organization. So just slapping technology on a broken system is not the answer. It can help alleviate some of the challenges, but it's definitely not the answer. And then the other nonprofit that I spend my time and not on the board is I am an active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And what is I think maybe unique about African-American sororities and fraternities is that the real fun happens post-graduation. Obviously, there's some fun during, when you're in school, but there are a lot of community activism that happens, education scholarships, tackling challenges that are happening, like sending water to Flint, Michigan. There's really strong community activism in a number of the African-American sororities and fraternities.
Well, that's great. I think each of those nonprofits, they're very descriptive of the things that interest you and the things that you're passionate about and where you can make a unique difference given your background. So, and speaking of your background, could you tell us a little bit more about your career journey and then maybe share something that we couldn't find on your LinkedIn profile about you?
Sure. So you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. So by the time I grew up, you can't see my air quotes. I would say my high school going into college life, I became a sports fanatic. And I do want to come back in my second life as a defensive tackle. So when I say I'm obsessed, I'm pretty obsessed. So I wanted to take up a career in sports marketing. I lived with college football players when I was at CU. We won a national championship then. A little name dropping. I worked for the head coach. I was all things sports, and I really was attempting to go into sports marketing. I was going to work for Nike or Pittsburgh Steelers, someone like that. What happened is, and for all you young listeners out there, I graduated undergrad and then I moved away for a boy. And what I did was I took the first job out of college, and it happened to be with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Nevada. And I was in my day 88 of a 90-day waiting period when I had to go have emergency surgery. And those 90-day waiting periods was for when your insurance kicked in. So here I was, graduated college, had some student debt, but I had some major healthcare debt. And to me, going back to my background, my upbringing, this was just inhumane to me that I had this amount of debt. And to top it off, I had to go back the next day because they botched what they did the day before. So, yeah. So it became my passion for sports marketing shifted to, I just traveled to many college football stadiums and go to almost all types of games that I can go to how do I disrupt healthcare? And it's fascinating. That was almost 30 years ago. And the conversation that we're having now, I was having in a younger form, but I was having it almost 30 years ago. And I had a lot of people looking at me like I was insane or crazy. And it's wonderful to know that there were many other folks across the country who also were having very similar conversations. And I would say over the past 6-7 years, we've found each other. And so the voices are louder. The companies are sprouting up. The conversations are slowly starting to change in large organizations, definitely changing in some of the new startup conversations. So I absolutely believe healthcare will be disrupted. And so that's kind of how I got into healthcare. And so my career, you can take a golden thread through it. It is strategy, all things strategy and innovation. And innovation is I would say a newly coined word, I would say, over the past 12 years. And so I was an innovator without knowing that I was an innovator from back when I started a dance team at the University of Colorado, an all Black dance team dancing on the football field, to companies that I started without knowing they were companies when I was 15, 16 years old. I've always had this entrepreneur in me. I don't know if any of you remember the infamous shopping cart video that IDEO put out as a 2020 story that featured IDEO back in, I think, late 90s. And I remember when I saw that video, and I had it in a good old VHS that I would show it all the time, anywhere, because it really talked about human-centered design. And I don't think they named it that, but it was human-centered design. And I started infusing that into everything that I did. So I had strategy and innovation throughout my career. And now that I'm an entrepreneur, it's interesting as I look back on my career, just seeing how everything that I have done has led me to this point. So whether it's helping to stand up new companies or helping to shift a culture inside a very large organization, whether it's to bring some discipline around strategy and strategic planning to get results, whether it is getting results around growth or new products, new solutions. I've had a long career doing that. And so it was a natural transition for me to co-found Bambü. And so when you ask me, what would you like to know about me that you wouldn't find in my LinkedIn profile? It's funny, as I started Bambü, I shifted my LinkedIn profile. So now that I wasn't part of the corporate America, squeaky clean, has to make sure that the language is all, you use all of the buzzwords of the day. I shifted to, I think, more of or less of a Diana Ross and more of a Tupac. So I can be a lot more edgy. I can be myself on my LinkedIn profile and not have to worry about getting the tapped on the shoulder, the email from HR or from public relations. So I'm not sure what new information, because my LinkedIn profile says that I love college football, that I DJ, that I love to travel. So it talks about that I'm obsessed with problems. So I'm hard pressed to find something other than, I used to swim competitively, and many people actually would doubt that. One, I was always accused of being a basketball player, and I'm like 5'7". I can't even imagine myself dribbling a ball. I've tried, and it's pretty awful to look at. But in terms of, I used to swim competitively. And so when I was at the University of Colorado, we went to the Orange Bowl, and one of my roommates was pawning me off in terms of setting some bets. Hey, I bet she could beat you. I bet she could beat you. I bet she could beat you. So here I am racing in a pool in South Beach, Miami, with a number of very athletic, some who went into the NFL, football players, beating every last one of them in the swimming pool. For a while, I held the 50 freestyle record in Fort Knox, Kentucky. That was many, many years ago, and I have not been able to find if that record still stands. I doubt it does. But yeah, my roommate made a little bit of change with all the bets that I won for him.
That's awesome. Great story. Wonderful. So Robin, people on our team, most of us didn't start in innovation, and you had a long tenure as a senior leader at various places. You mentioned Kaiser Permanente and Blue Cross Blue Shield. You were Chief Innovation Officer. What's the story of how you merged officially into innovation, and what stories could you share about corporate innovation at a payer?
I would say, and I will say this and stand by it, most payers are not serious about true innovation. I recently wrote a blog about looking good versus being good. And looking good meaning I have innovation, I have a team, check. I'm with the cool kids. I can say I have innovation. And usually that innovation is focused more on core, sustainable, incremental type of innovation. Now, being good, but I think being good from an innovation perspective, that's a lifestyle. You can go on Apple, Google, Samsung, I would imagine Amazon, many of those organizations that you think of when you think of innovative organizations, and you would be hard pressed to find their innovation team, right? It's just who they are. And in my experience, there definitely is a difference of readiness and rigor to truly disrupt healthcare. Many will say it. Few, I think, are ready for that. And so when I think about corporate innovation, it's a bit of an oxymoron, as it's not, in my time, I've not come across those who I truly think are, wow, they're doing some stuff. Now, within these organizations, there are unsung heroes everywhere. And unfortunately, some of these unsung heroes have bootstraps on them, boots stuck in cement and not able to move, hands tied behind their back. And it's one of those things where you're just putting your thoroughbreds in a stable. I would say that when many folks are asking me how best to work with a payer as it pertains to innovation, so to flip your question a little bit, it's I think the best way for payers to truly get innovative is to get pushed by those that they truly pay attention to, which are the large employers. So large employers, if you're out there listening, if you are looking to see more innovation from your healthcare provider, your health plan, speak loudly, because they listen, absolutely listen. And when enough voices are saying and demanding more, and once the employer, and I would even say now the consumer, realize how large and how loud their voice is, we'll start seeing some shift. But I think because most employers and consumers are so reliant on payers, there's not a recognition of that power that I think that they have.
Yeah, let's follow this theme a little bit more. And based on your understanding of disruptive innovation theory, how would you predict disruption will play out in the health insurance industry?
That's a great question. I've been saying for the past few years that I believe the answer to healthcare, it exists. It's already out there. And it's out there because we see it in other countries. And it's out there because if we start breaking down the components of healthcare, it's really just taking what service industries are doing so well and applying it to healthcare, taking what these rapid cycle product development organizations are doing and apply it to healthcare. It's taking the supply versus demand model that at like an Uber or a Lyft has created and applying that to healthcare. So it's taking these different components and looking at them in a healthcare lens. And so I think to talk about Clay Christensen, the best way to disrupt healthcare is you have to bring those solutions down market where everyone is running from. So, for example, while big box brands were building like crazy, Amazon said, not doing that. It will take someone who's not beholden to all of the same building blocks of healthcare that we hold dear and true. It'll take someone who doesn't have a personal interest. So why would a payer disrupt itself? Why would a provider disrupt itself? Why would hospitals disrupt itself? I mean, if you do not have anything to break, you could become pretty lethal. And so I think about an Amazon and just how they have totally changed the game in so many ways, shapes, or form. A number of businesses they have put out, businesses who held true to their brick and mortar, businesses who held true to people are going to want to come in and see something and touch it before they buy it. When I think about an Uber who said, yeah, we want to get into this business, but they didn't go the route of a Hertz or a National. They went the route of looking at from a mindset of abundance. There's a lot of supply out there. And I think about from a healthcare perspective, when I met the CEO from Rosen Hotels and Resorts, and how he thinks about healthcare. Now, he's in the hospitality business, and there's a lot of things that I think healthcare can learn from the hospitality business. But this guy is thinking about, look, I can build a hotel for about $200,000 a bed. It costs about $2 million a bed to build a hospital. So how might I build a hospital that can flex as a hotel or vice versa? And coming from an abundance mindset, he's going to figure it out. Coming from a scarcity mindset, someone will say, oh, well, there's all these OSHA and compliance, and there's never... I caught myself. I almost cussed. but I say poppycock. But coming from
fiddlesticks.
Yeah, fiddlesticks. Yeah, sorry, Mom. No, coming from a different mindset, and this is an individual who has also fallen in love with the problem of healthcare from a cost perspective. and many, Amazon coming from a place, from a cost and convenience perspective. These are people who have solved for it in their industry. And so bringing that to bear in a healthcare industry that is woefully behind other industries in terms of innovation or disruption, it will take the perfect storm of the Amazons, and I would even say the Ubers of the world, coming into this space, who they are already in this space, to truly disrupt healthcare, because their mindset is already there. I've met Atul Gawande. I've worked with Atul Gawande. He is a weird thinker like I am. He thinks like I do. And now he's in charge of running an organization that I'm just saying, watch out, they will absolutely disrupt healthcare.
Great perspective. Well, Robin, you recently presented at the HXD 2019 conference hosted by MadPow. And during your onstage interview, you asked the audience if anyone used Clay Christensens' theories, and my hand shot way up. I was jumping out of my seat. What impact has Clay's theories had on your innovation approach, maybe particularly with Bambü and the things that you're sharing now? And any stories about how you have applied the theories and tools, or now how you're consulting others to apply those theories and tools?
My first entree to formal innovation is the 2020 IDEO video that I mentioned. My second formalization was through the Harvard Executive Leadership Program. When I was at the Kaiser Permanente, I was one of about 50-ish executives who spent a total of a month at Harvard Executive Leadership Program. And one of those days was taught by Clay Christensen. So I got to meet and be taught by the man, the myth, the legend. And when he was speaking, as your hand shot way up, imagine sitting in his classroom. I was a kid just seeing Santa Claus for the first time and knowing that he had my Barbie dream house. It was a really exciting, and I learned a ton. Everything that my thinking today is largely shaped by how what he titles disruptive innovation, and improving products that appeal to new people, going after segments that many are running from. And when I think about one of the biggest issues that I have in healthcare is this notion of Medicaid. And so when often people hear the word Medicaid, it conjures up, this is poor, this is for the poor and uneducated. What has happened as a result of the ACA is that my daughter, who just finished her first year at Georgetown Med School, my son, who just graduated college, both under the age of 26, if they were in the healthcare market, they would be covered under Medicaid. And so I desire for us to shift our thinking around Medicaid. And if we're going to be thinking and living in the Clay Christensen way, we wouldn't call it Medicaid and Medicare, because those are segments that the people who have coverage under Medicaid, the people who have coverage under Medicare, even the people who have coverage under commercial and other types of segments that our industry has sliced based on who pays, not based on who actually we're caring for.
Yeah, not based on the job to be done.
It's not based on the job to be done. And I don't know what those jobs could be. It might be the keep me well job, right? It might be, I have something chronic, make me live well while I have something chronic job. It could be those types of jobs that are more human centered and less financial centered. And I think that's important because words matter, names matter. And having worked for large organizations that segment the market that way, I think we tend to remove ourselves from the human nature. Now, you can go to I will bet even your organization, you can go to any healthcare organization and they will have some mantra of, we put the patient first, high quality, affordable care. And I just step back and say, how's that working out for people? Show me where high quality, affordable care is being delivered everywhere. or anywhere. And this notion of affordability, it's such a nebulous term. I recall, and I won't mention who or where, but I was in a boardroom in a meeting, and the comment was made, great, thanks to ACA, people will only have to pay maybe a couple of $100 for care. Now, for executives who make 7 digits or 6 digits in salary, a couple $100 a month, no big deal. But for many Americans in this country, a couple $100 is the difference between a meal and not having one. And a couple $100 nowadays with how much pharmaceuticals are costing, that doesn't even scratch the surface. I think we're just so detached from the human, and it's just how we are segmenting the business. That would just run in the face of what Clay Christensen would say, and how he would encourage us to disrupt healthcare. The other component is innovation. Often in large organizations is embedded in the organization, meaning the function is in the organization, and it sits within the same budgeting process. It sits within the same planning process. It sits within often the same building. And so while I do think innovation should be embedded in the organization, there needs to be a skunk work, garage, whatever you want to call it, where I would say, and I put myself in this class, where you have the weirdos who are just off on their own, thinking up weird stuff to do day in and day out. You need people to be able to have freedom to say and plan and try things that would really freak the organization out, and be able to do that without the burden and weight of the organization, the traditional organization bringing it down. So different business models, different reporting, different budget, different financials, different freedom to fail. And it's hard to use that word fail in healthcare, because if you're at a Kaiser Permanente, fail could mean death, because that's both the care delivery as well as the insurer. So I get it. And failure could mean fines. Failure could mean you lose a large employer or a customer. And so to allow people to have a safe environment to fail that runs on a different business model, I think is the best solution for large organizations who are really wanting to disrupt healthcare.
Excellent perspective, Robin. And I'll count myself as one of those weirdos. And but you have been talking about a mindset shift. I'm really liking what you're saying around the shift from maybe payer mix to job mix, and just thinking about things differently. That I'm gonna have to noodle on that a little bit more going forward. That's so interesting. Another thing that you mentioned at the Health Experience Design Conference was that one problem that you're particularly passionate about improving is maternal health. From your research and work in this space, what can be done to improve maternal care in America?
Great question. Very similar to my relationship with Build. I learned through the hard way that there are still women who are dying giving birth. I learned that because less than 2 years ago, one of my best friends died during childbirth. I had no idea that this still exists. So one of the things that can be done to improve maternal mortality in America is awareness. My girlfriend who passed away, highly educated Filipino woman. Me, I'm pretty educated African-American woman. And why that matters is that African-American women are 5 times more likely to die during childbirth. I had no idea. And so the second thing to me, outside of awareness, is around health equity. And so what that means is that we usually use the term culturally competent care. And often that is attached to Hispanic speaking or Spanish speaking, or it's attached back to Medicaid or poor, underserved communities. And I believe culturally competent care absolutely needs to exist there. Language should not be a barrier to care. Where you live, your zip code should not be a barrier to care. That absolutely has to happen. And there are probably very basic needs that many of these segments would benefit from that I would say large amount of organizations are ignoring and focusing more on those flashy bells and whistles, just basic understanding and basic needs. And I would also add that as I think about culturally competent care, it definitely is from an underserved, underrepresented mindset, but that's just not poor and uneducated. I've had countless times when I would go into a clinician's office, people telling me they do not accept Medicaid. I'm like, great, never had it. Don't even know how it works. Actually, I do. I've had people make assumptions about where I live and what might be occurring in my home based on my skin color. I've had clinicians who just make assumptions based on what I look like and not who I am as a person. And so when I think of culturally competent care and I think of health equity, it is around better understanding the needs of the person and not making those assumptions in terms of how you are caring for and treating your patient. And so it's also what happens is that many providers just will not take their patients seriously. They must not be educated to know that something's wrong with them. Or they probably can't afford to get XYZ, so I'm not even going to bring that up. I personally have had that experience, and I have many friends who have had that experience. And so when I think about how we can improve maternal care, maternal mortality, is get the word out that this exists and continue to hammer home the message of health equity, in particular culturally competent care.
Well, that's certainly music to my ears. I actually presented at HXD, and my topic was culturally competent care. So that's something where you and I share a passion. That's awesome. Well, let's wrap it up with one last question. If I were to rummage through Robin's secret bag of innovation resources, what other books or tools or theories might I find there?
If you rummage through my bag, you'll probably find an empty cork bottle from a bottle of wine, red preferably. And I say that tongue in cheek, but also a bit out of some seriousness. I think I do not have the pleasure of direct patient care. And so I don't take myself seriously. And I believe that, having fun is incredibly important. So if you are not spending most of your waking hours at your job, if you're not spending most of your waking hours having fun, you're in the wrong business. You're totally in the wrong business. So in my bag, you'll find things that just make me laugh and things that would be some conversation starters. As an innovator, you always have Sharpies and Post-its. I'll have other random things in my bag that I'm just pulling out, and that's all in the fun category, and be ready to have some sort of stoke or fun just to get the party started. But I would also say I feel like this is a therapy session. I have not read a business book, I would say, in probably 4 or 5 years. Well, that felt good to say.
Wow.
And mostly because I just have been busy. And so I do find more value in blogs and Harvard Business Reviews, short stories around Fast Company, reading someone's posting on LinkedIn. I find incredible value from people that I know and I can touch and smell and say and pick up the phone and ask questions. So I tend to so probably in my bag of resources, I probably have the biggest collection of business cards. My contacts on my iPhone is probably at the max level. And I just believe in having the people who think similarly to you from a mindset perspective at your fingertips. Now, it's not to say that you need to surround yourself by like-minded folks. It really is around surrounding yourself with like-mindset folks. And then, the counter to that is find those people who disagree with you, not to change their mind, although I perversely get some satisfaction of watching someone shift their thinking, but more so around, I think it just makes me better, and it makes a potential solution better when you are looking at radically collaborating, or you're looking for someone who has a complete opposite view from you. I find beauty, I find magic in all spectrums, whether you agree with me or whether you don't. But I do find myself trying to surround myself with those who are very like-minded.
Yeah. Oh, Robin, this has been a real treat. Thank you so much for this conversation, and I wish you the very best with Bambü and look forward to following your work for years to come.
Well, thank you, and hopefully we can be deliberate about collaborating. I just think that healthcare is a team sport, and the more the merrier that are fighting in the same jersey. I think I threw like 6 analogies in that comment. The more the merrier, I think. That's the only way we're going to do it. We have to do it together.
That's right. We have to find more like mindset folks.
Yes.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Robin.
All right. Thank you.
Well, listeners, thanks for doing that thing you do. Our next episode drops in a couple of weeks. This has been Tingy. Sayonara.
You guys are definitely more of a unicorn than what I'm used to.
Cool. We love unicorns.
Yeah, I do too.